Hi and welcome along to AFTV. Earlier this year, we went over to Ghana to do a big watch party, meet loads of Arsenal fans, and it was brilliant. It was the Arsenal versus West Ham game when we won 6-0, and we had an absolutely incredible experience. But something else happened to me when I was over there. I went to a really, really unique place that really, really touched me. I remember me and Cecil was there and we was walking through this place and we was like, this is incredible. This is a moment in history that everybody needs to know about. And as we celebrate Black History Month, we want you to join us for our full uncut tour that we did to a very important historical site in Ghana, the Cape Coast Castle, one of the largest slave castles on the West African coast, where thousands of my ancestors were held captive, stripped to their freedom and forced into the darkness of those walls. This video will take you through an emotional journey uncovering the harrowing experiences and enduring lessons of that dark chapter in human history. Join us as we walk through the corridors and dungeons where countless souls endured unthinkable hardships. Let's step back in time and learn from the past to ensure that we have a better future for all.
Good morning. My name Thomas Abankwa, and I'm going to be your guide. So if there is any question, comment, or contribution, let me know. But I must say the history in here is very traumatic and emotional. But then the most important aspect is the lesson that we learned from this place. We'll first have a look inside the male dungeons. We'll see the graveyard. There's a condemned cell before we move upstairs. Compare some of the rooms that were used by the Europeans, and as well we'll go end the tour at the door or the gate of no return. At that same point, we are going to see the female dungeons as well as their cell. We stand right inside Cape Coast slave dungeons, and others do call this place Cape Coast Slave Castle. And it happens to be the third and the smallest castle that was built by the Europeans when they came to our shores. The coast of West Africa, it is estimated that about 60 forts and castles were built in here. Just that Ghana alone had more than 40 of them, all because of gold. That is why this place was once called the Gold Coast. Nigeria, Benin, Niger, and a section of Togo had the name Slave Coast, because that was where a lot of the West Africans actually were captured from, telling us that Grain Coast, Ivory Coast, and others probably had their names based on the resource that they were getting from the lands. And a lot of these Africans moving from Nigeria, Benin, Niger, having the forts and castles down here should tell us they were walking. And I always do use Accra as my reference point. Just imagine today coming here, you were asked to walk down to this point, the journey it will take you before you make it in here. But then these Africans were to walk as far as Nigeria, of which a lot of them died. Because wild animals would attack some of them, some probably would get drowned in rivers, others also, tiredness, hunger would kill them.
Yeah, from the walk from Accra to here?
I'm using, let's say, from Nigeria, Benin, and others coming here.
Okay.
You know, a lot of these Africans had to walk through different slave markets, and popularly in Ghana, we have areas like Salaga, Yendi, Tumu, Pikoro that were serving as resting points. Then down to the coast, they had a place called Asin Manso, which happens to be the busiest as well. Over there, they had a river, and that is where the captives are going to be given their last bath as Africans. They are given food to eat to regain some strength. Their beard, hair shaved for them to look younger for the trade, before shea butter will be applied on their skin. And the purpose of the shea butter was to heal their wounds and also make them look attractive before they will get them into the castles. And once you arrive in this castle being a focus, first they will move you to the second floor over there, which is the Palava Hall. And up there, nurses, doctors would get them examined to know their strength as to whether they were fit as domestic captives or commercial captives. And the domestic ones are those going to work in the castle, and the commercial are those to be exported before they start to auction or to barter the captives. And up there, humans were exchanged for goods like gunpowder, mirror, alcoholics, fabrics, leatherworks, ceramics, metallic objects like bangles, beads, tobacco, sugar, and other things that we might have heard they were using for the exchange. Then right after the exchange, all the captives are brought down to the forecourt for branding. And that was where they would set fire, placed in metals that had their embossed designs underneath them. When the metal is seen red hot, it is moved from the fire into an oil as a male directly to your chest, your shoulder, or your back. But in females, because they do have breasts, probably will be at the shoulder, the back, or arm. Some preferred piercing their captives with tacks, and others were given metals like anklets so they could easily identify them. From there, all the males are moving directly this way, the females also into their respective dungeons to await their ship. But then get to know once you are inside this castle, you are going to work. So in terms of construction, breaking of stones, carrying cannons up and down, the captives in here were doing that. So mostly we do credit the castle to the English, but then the labor work happens to be the enslaved Africans. I made mention that a lot of forts and castles were built on our land, but then out of these numbers, only 3 were castles, of which the first ever European structure to be built on our land happens to be the St. George's Castle, popularly today we call the Almina Castle, and it was built by the Portuguese around 1482. The second one happens to be the Christiansborg or the Osu Castle, which was built by the Danish around 1661. And the last is where we all find ourselves today, Cape Coast Castle, which was also built by the English around 1664. But then out of the 3 structures, Cape Coast Castle, where we are standing today, happens to be the only castle that was built purposely for the transatlantic slave trade, because the structure we are seeing here was built at the peak of the trade. One probably would ask what even brought about this whole trade itself. It was around the 1400s that Europeans started coming to Africa. And historically, we were told that they were here as missionaries, as explorers, merchants, and others. But I always do say 2 major factors brought the Europeans to our land, of which the first aspect in here being gold, and the second aspect being humans. Because before the Europeans came to Africa, there were once Arabs in here. And most of the Arabs mostly would stay at the north, the east of Africa to trade. And when they had humans, they had natural resources who supply some to the Europeans. So historically, areas like Cyprus, Spain, Portugal, and others, they had Africans that would be working on these areas for them. But at the point, the Europeans wanted to break the monopoly that the Arabs were enjoying in Africa. So if they had taken the north and the east of Africa for their trade, equally they could also use the west, the center, and the south of Africa. But then West Africa became their focus, because they got to know that a lot of the resources that the Arabs supplied to them neither came from the north nor the east of Africa, but rather the west. And those days, as I made mention, the focus was gold. They supported their fact with the pilgrimage that Mansa Musa had around 1324. The Portuguese actually came in, monopolized the business for some time. But then get to know this. Historically, we were told that Gold Coast is the first place that the Portuguese settled. But then get to know, before they came in here, they had already been to Cape Verde. The Portuguese went to Sao Tome. Somewhere 1441 was when they settled in Senegal. And over there, they had 11 Africans, saying they were going to Christianize them so they could become missionaries and as well come in here to spread their gospel. But then when they got to Portugal, the then king saw these 11 Africans and said they were strong as slaves, not as missionaries. So they couldn't come back as intended. So coming back to Gold Coast 1471, that is 30 years after, should tell us the human trade also brought the Portuguese in here. When the Portuguese were here, stayed, monopolized the business for some time until the 1500s, when they were seeking roads to India, or let me say Asia, to trade. And that was where they got to the Americas, where plantations like sugarcane, tobacco, cotton, coffee, and others in large scale were established. And earlier, they were using natives from those lands as well as captives from Europe to work on these plantations. But then due to the hardship, they were dying. Aside that, being introduced to disease like measles, influenza, and others would kill them. So they had a Catholic missionary, the name Bartolomeo de las Casas, who was like, why don't they shift the demand to Africa? Because these Africans proved to be strong. The African system actually can withstand both tropical disease as well as the European diseases. And naturally, these Africans themselves are into farming. So if you want someone to work on a plantation, then Africans actually should be the best candidates for the work. But you know, when the Europeans came in here, the early state of the system was they themselves to raid, kidnap along the communities where they stayed. Some of the Africans got convinced that if they were to join them into the New World, they were going to be given better lives. But then a lot of them that were brought in here happens to be as a result of tribal wars here in Africa. I'm saying this all because before the Europeans came, Africans already knew slavery. Just that we were practicing slavery and not slave trade. In the olden days, the system was, if I get to fight you and I defeat you, I fuse into my system. So once you are in there serving, some would see you as a slave, others would see you as a servant. But then within the African servitude system, a slave today, tomorrow could be a free person if you were to prove yourself right. Some servants could work hard to pay off their debt to gain their freedom. Some of them, due to how hardworking they were, their masters could give relatives to them to marry. Even some were given lands to start their own family, and some to the extent could even change status of being a slave to become a royal. And through that, they got their freedom. Knowing this, it made it easier for the Europeans, because this larger group here happens to be divisions that came together to give the larger system. So then, we would also attack the divisions in there. So let me say you are from England, I'm from the Netherlands, and let's say he's from Denmark. So once you are in here, we then associate ourselves with the tribes. We supply them with weapons and as well entice them with gifts. So just as they used to fight themselves and actually grow, this time when he gets to defeat the enemy, he can't keep them on the land again. Rather, he would supply them to me so that I give him more weapons. The same way, if this tribe defeat any of them, we supply them to you and as well the other tribe to him. So
That's a trade.
Yeah. So we probably wouldn't go out to do the hunting again. Rather, we give the weapons to the tribe, they fight themselves and enemies were brought in here. And the system was made such tight that you can't resist. Because if you try to resist, your people would end up being captured. Because the aspect was you needed guns to protect your people. And where would you get the guns from? The castle. So you only bring me humans and I'll also give you weapons. And through that, most of the Africans got themselves involved. That is why today historians do tell me the divide and rule system. So they wouldn't go with their faces. Rather, they give them as enticing them to actually intensify the system, and as well, they'll be getting them. But then the trade never ends in Africa. Because after all this exchange, they would move them into the New World, and that is where plantation owners would get them exchange with sugarcane, tobacco, cotton, coffee, and others. The raw materials are moved to Europe. In Europe, they get them transformed into finished goods, and all these goods are moving back here for the trade to start all over again. And that gave us the triangular trade or the transatlantic slave trade. Europe as the origin, Africa, the Middle Passage, the Americas, the Caribbean, that took about 300 to 400 years to end. And I'm giving a range all because as it stands, we still don't know the exact date they started. So for some,
300 to 400 years till it ended.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
Because some are saying it was around 1500 the trade started. Others are saying 1600. Okay. So when you pick 1500, that is almost 400 years. Yeah. And when you pick 16, almost 300 years. So that is actually the genesis of the trade. If you have any question before we have a look inside the male dungeons, please let me know.
No, let's take a look.
Look, yeah, let's go down.
Right. But then before we walk in there, I would want to actually create us an awareness here. I made mention we are moving into the male dungeons, but then get to know right above them, the English had the church established. The name Society for the Propagation of the Gospel. Today we call it the Anglican Church or Church of England. So whilst others were worshiping up here, right beneath them, humans were struggling. And it would surprise you that this castle alone had 2 churches operating. So aside the Anglican Church, they had the Wesley Methodist also established right in here. So please, you join me downstairs. We are standing right inside the male dungeons. And the dungeon in here is actually having 5 chambers. The first one, the second, the third, fourth, straight to the fifth one. A chamber we are standing in, when fully loaded, can hold about 150 to 200 captives. But in get to know, humans were hunted, raided, kidnapped, so they wouldn't always have the place filled with humans. Sometimes a place can even be less than 50. But then because of the conditions they had in the dungeons, not all of them are making it out of this point. Because once you are brought in here, they expect you to defecate here, urinate in here, sleep in the same condition. A lot of these Africans got sick, because keeping them in the dungeons, communicable disease would easily get to spread amongst them. And aside that, the unhygienic condition they had in here would add up to the illness. When you die in the dungeons, there wouldn't be any befitting burial for you. They are going to load the bodies in sacks. They add cannonballs to give it weight, and will dump all these bodies straight into the sea. So today, the ocean that we are to see out there happens to be mass burial for a lot of the Africans that died in it. When we look on the floor, you probably get to see some trenches, and these trenches were made for waste to move out of this thing straight into the sea. But then you ask yourself, how often would it rain? And even if it does rain, there wouldn't be enough force for them to move the waste. So the domestic captives in the dungeons or the castles were those assigned to be cleaning the place, and they were not doing that on a regular basis. Before they come in here to clean the place, some of them might have probably stepped on the poop and other stuff, making them stuck on the floor. So what they could get from this place, they do so. The rest, they had to cover them with sand, and that system started creating layers in the dungeon. In the year 1974, the same year this castle was opened to the general public, we had some group of archaeologists from the University of Ghana, which was led by the late Professor Panda. They had this ring excavating, discovered that the bricks that we stand on happens to be the original floor of the dungeons. So they had to take samples of what they got from this place to their lab. Got them tested, and the result that came out says whatever that we stand on from the second to the fifth chamber happens to be the poop, the vomit, the sweat, the blood, the food particles, things that we humans do excrete from our system, mixed with sun and food, is what we're going to work on. Aside that, they even left some small portion over there, just serve as a proof. So if anybody here doesn't believe, there are samples here for you as well to get to test whether these are human waste or not. And the condition that I'm talking of in here, the captives could stay in minimum was just a day. But the maximum, we are estimating almost over 3 months. Because get to know, until the ship was ready, you probably wouldn't leave this place. Out of the 5 children that they had here, only the first one had a gate. All because those that were kept in here were seen to be the aggressive ones. And these aggressive ones were mostly kept in chains, making sure they wouldn't fight the officers when they were in to inspect or probably bring in food. And talking about food, sometimes they were fed in here, sometimes they were fed outside. But then those that were fed in the dungeons, get to know it wouldn't be evenly distributed. If I'm that strong, I wouldn't want to actually get something small. So it's level of the fittest in here. So the more stronger you were, the more probably you get more to eat. The weaker ones had to starve in the dungeons as well.
Yeah, so imagine being in here, like you said, up to 3 months. We got the lights on for the cameras, so it seems a bit more absolutely pitch black with hundreds of other people. And like you said,
illness.
Survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you're not strong in here, you probably don't even eat. Crazy.
Crazy, man. Honestly, this is a lot, man. This is a lot. This is heavy.
So right above this dungeons happens to be a church. The name Society for the Propagation of the Gospel, SPG. Today we call it the Anglican Church of England.
Yeah.
And we paused here all because of this hole, or the spy hole there. You know, it is right in front of the church. So before you would walk into the church, move out of the church, everything that was happening down here, they would smell, they would hear, and also get to see them. So whilst others will be preaching, love your neighbor as yourself, beneath them others were also shedding tears. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery. Females were being raped in the castle. The males also had a place where they were being condemned. Thou shalt not steal. And humans, natural resources were being taken from this place. So what actually they were preaching up there, directly beneath them, they were doing actually different. Yeah. The aspect was, I always say, I don't condemn Christianity, but I rather condemn the act or the people that actually brought the system in here. Because the aspect of those days, they never brought Christianity actually for salvation of Africans, but rather it happens to be one of the biggest two they used to enslave these Africans, all because when they came in, they knew that these Africans themselves actually were spiritual. So the easiest way to actually get them was as well to attack from the spiritual aspect. And I always say that spirits have to do with actually someone's belief, but actually from the heart. So once they're able to control your heart, they actually get to control your mind. Your body can't do anything for that. They can actually get to transport them. So in here, I always say it was a grooming state. So they had them dehumanized before they were even transported. That is why if you look at the conditions they were staying in here, economically it was unreasonable. Because if you want someone to work on a plantation, I'm not sure you have to keep them within the state. But rather, once they weaken your system, they knew these people, because of their belief, hard charms and all that, to strip everything off before you can easily get to transport them.
Yeah, you break a person, innit?
Yeah.
I know it was not only Cape Coast Castle they were doing this. Because if you are to visit Elmina Castle, the same thing happened over there. Elmina, the Portuguese established a Catholic church right above their slave market.
That is awful.
But then the premises above us, at the point, became a classroom. But then the classroom was not for purely Africans, neither purely Europeans. It was actually designed for the mixed race, the kids that they had with the blacks. And some of them moving in out of the school, seeing others down here, historically, some became slave merchants. And I always say that their system was even worse, because for them, they were born and raised within the same castle where the trade was taking place. So just imagine you being born and raised in here, how you also get to relate with the system in the dance.
So if they're mixed race, is that from the rapes that were happening?
So rapes, and some of them were actually let me say, concubines, and others were also wives, because some of the Europeans married ladies from the town.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of them, if I'm to say 100%, about 80-90% of them, I would say, happens to be as a result of the rape system. Please, let me show you something here. The first chamber was excavated 1974, but then where we stand, there hasn't been any excavation. But then due to erosion, I'm sure we can all see the bricks here.
Yeah.
And from the brick up to this point, all that we are seeing here, the thickness happens to be the waste. So you could imagine, even over the years, over 100 years, we keep working on it, but then still we have it this thick. So imagine the cat is staying in here, how high the waste would have been. And probably wouldn't have been as solid as we are standing on. Probably would have been a little bit softer that we see today. And this is where the captives will stay for weeks, days, and months before they leave this end. Please, you join me in the last chain. All right, so this happens to be the last chamber. And this place was also for the selection of the captives. You know, because of the conditions they had in the dungeons, not all of them actually were that fit to make it out of this plant. So when ships were ready, those that were seen extremely weak, they had to keep them over there, and the rest in chains would walk through a tunnel that connects this place to the door or the gate of no return. It's about 65 meters away from this place. But then today, it's unfortunate we can't go to the tunnel, but then we'll probably get to have a look at the tunnel when we move outside. Blocking the tunnel was to symbolize the English ending slavery. Because you know, the English passed law 1807, which was to abolish the transatlantic slave trade. But then 1808 took the first. But then get to know it wasn't only the English in the system. Others were still playing their system in the air. So historically in Africa, we do see around 1860s was when they ended this whole trade.
Yep.
Saying they had an entrance here should tell us this was not part of the dungeon system. But if they had an entrance, this pin probably wouldn't be there to block them.
Abu!
Amen.
Abu!
Amen.
Abu!
Amen.
Ana Tabinson! The ground was only a part of mine. The work of the people and say, so go and away. One and another, a hundred would do when one pray. Walk once a number, once a number, one more some Wabenu Crum. Wabi in our two. Papa no, Bonoban, look what the bed is done at my man. Now there was some alliance, so don't lose natural. The first of his Shema, he shall come. Yes, Ampa.
You know, I made mention that a lot of these Africans, once they die in here, their bodies were dumped into the sea. Then for us here, we believe that their souls are still in the castles. So visitors mostly do break wreaths, flowers to honor, respect, and remember them. And when they bring them here, we prefer not to litter the sea because we believe that their souls are still in the castle. So when they bring them, this is where we mostly do lay them, and as well in the dungeons. All right, so earlier, I made mention that some of our ancestors played a role in the trade. Because for nothing at all, some of them actually brought in their enemies as prisoners of war, and others also gave the Europeans land to settle. So many Africans also aided in the trade. And for that, the chiefs in Ghana admitted that fact. In the year 1992, they brought this plaque during the maiden Panafest to say they are sorry for their ancestors getting to involve themselves in the trade. And the plaque that we are seeing here should always remind we the living, so we don't forget to repeat the same mistake again.
Yeah.
It reads, in the everlasting memory of the anguish of our ancestors, may those who died rest in peace, may those who return find their roots, and may humanity never again perpetrate such injustice against humanity. They ended, we the living vow to uphold this. The living happens to be myself, and that's what we all here. So if I see myself deemed not to be enslaved, so do we all deserve the same rights. For that, they brought this plaque, always to remind us. But then we keep reading this plaque here, and we keep repeating the same mistake over and over again. And Barack Obama and the wife also visited us 2009 after their tour. A flag was also unveiled to appreciate them here.
Yeah. You know, I always wondered, right? Like, so that's interesting with that plaque because I've always wondered why Why did it? I know that a lot of the tribes had a part to play by bringing slaves here, but I always used to wonder, why didn't they just at some stage all get together and say, yo, do you know what's going on down there?
So,
But like you said earlier, it's the divide and conquer thing. You keep everybody separate. Because if they would all got together, said, actually, we're going to run up on this place.
And the aspect is, history actually sometimes don't make reference of some actually fighting against the trade, but then some did.
Yeah.
Is that the whole aspect was, let me use even in Ghana. I'm going to use, let's say, about 7 tribes. Let's say you're an Asante, he's a Fanti, let's say he's a Ga, an Ewe, and let's say a Denchera. But then the system was based on that when the English came in here, they had the Fantis, they had their Chim, they had the Denchera, they had their Kwamus as their friends. The Dutch came in here, made the Asante their friend. The Danish came in here, made the Gas, made the Ewes, and those in eastern portion as their friends. So I'm an Asante. If I fight you Fanti, or I fight you Konkomba anywhere, I'll take you to Elmina Castle because I work with the Dutch.
Yeah.
The same way, if the Fanti also get to defeat me, the Asante, you'll probably bring me here. And get to know those that were staying closer here were more Fantis. So it means those in here, although some were from different areas in West Africa, I would say most of them saw them to be enemies. And those days too, just as an English person wouldn't see a Danish person as a brother or a sister, the same way an Asante and a Ga are not the same.
Yeah.
So we had tribes that would probably say today happens to be countries. So those days the tribes were the division. So an Asante and a Konkomba, an Asante and a Fanti might share boundaries, but they were not the same. So they never saw themselves to be equal to come together to fight the oppressors. Yeah. And the system was that even if we were thousands, they had guns. And the guns were more powerful than their bows and arrows. So let's say if one person is holding a gun, it can control about the whole community. Yeah. So with that, with the weapons, we're more powerful. So for them to come together, no. So with that, then we also make them feel that we are their friends. That is why when they come, they try to associate themselves with a particular group. So with this group, then they become my allies. So with that, they supply me the same way others would do. So it was like, you might think this is coming as a friend, but in the other way, might also be an enemy. So we fight, then we supply.
Okay.
So please, let me take you to the condemned cell over there.
Yeah.
We stand right in front of a cell, and this is not any ordinary cell, but a condemned cell, of course. And as if the dungeon itself was not punishment enough. Yeah. You know, a lot of the Africans that were brought in here, I made mention, were warriors from their tribes. So when they are brought out to work, some of them will want to fight the officers, and others will also want to escape from this place. So the freedom fighters, they saw them to be rebellious, and for that, rebellious ones had to be killed to deter others from trying to escape from the castle. And in here, they were not going to shoot 30 here. Rather, they would have them beaten before they moved them into the cell. Having 3 doors blocked behind them, no food, no water, no air, and no light. So you get dehydrated, you suffocate, and then you die in there. But then the sad aspect in the cell is that let's say you're about 3 or let's say 5 or 10. Once you are in there, the soldier assigned at the gate, your duty was to make sure all of them in there were dead. So if I move in there and realize, let's say the 3 of us gone, leaving about 5, I would take the 3 out. I wait till all the 8 people in there dies before we bring them out. They bring the males, mostly those that were in the first chamber, because they were those they saw to be rebellious. In the castle, we had to see a lot of doors and windows and get to know we've restored all of them. That is the last door we have now. The only original door in the castle. So any other door you have to see, we've restored the last door.
Wow.
Bloody hell.
Oh my God, no.
So no light in here.
No lights, no water.
No air, yeah, no light, no air.
No light, no air, no water. Just, you just, in here you come to die. And suffer as well, because surely they could have just killed him. But they're trying to send a message in there. They're trying to.
So I always say in here everything has to do with the heart and the mind. So whatever they do, they make sure they control your mind, or probably they have to do with you breaking him. So with that, Once they keep them in here and others get to see them, lay them down like that, will probably sleep.
And sometimes there's more than just one person. Just in some of these that you said it
It
could
could
be a
be
few.
5, it could be 10, it could be 15, it could be 20, depending on those that will try to escape or those that will fight it. And today, all the 3 doors are open, but I'm sure we still feel the heat in here. So just imagine even having 1 or 2 of them blocked for us to stay in here. Just
suffer.
the last person dies in here, nobody was to leave this place. This room that we stand actually was a storage room for which they had the door over there. But then with the intentions of using it as a condemned cell, they had this door blocked so that when you get in here, you probably wouldn't get any place to escape. That is why today some prefer calling this place the room of no return, because you would enter this room as a living being, but then only dead bodies were taken out of this point.
So yeah, we're standing in the cells. It's like
As if the dungeon wasn't worse enough. This is.
yeah. It's honestly, it's very harrowing here because, like, I don't know about you, Cecil, but I'm standing here and I'm just imagining people here.
Yeah. No air, no light, no food, and like you said, it could be more than one person just standing in here. There could be a few, and just
Yeah, just imagine like
place
no
of no
air,
return.
the sea's just there, so it get dampish. You know?
We have the lights, like if,
The heat
it
in
being
here.
pitch black, and then the heat as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's get out. I want to get out of here. This spine. This is chilling. I'll be real, I don't love this, man. This is like, it's making me feel weird, bro. It's mad. Honestly. It's like forms of torture, like just being in a dungeon or the cell.
We stand right inside the Palava Hall, which happens to be the marketplace. And if you do remember, I made mention when the captives get to the castle, they were first brought in here. So within this chamber, nurses, doctors will get them examined to know their strength as to whether they were fit as domestic or commercial captives before they march them forward and get them exchanged.
Thomas, what's the difference between the commercial and the domestic? The domestic.
So here in Africa, we do know that feel that, let's say we bring the 2 of you in here, because of his skin, I might say he's more stronger than you. Because in here, due to the tropical condition, he can withstand the system than you. The same way.
No, that's facts. True. That's facts.
That's not
already.
true.
That's already facts.
The same way I would say he's more muscular. 30, you know.
What about age though? Age doesn't do
Look at, he's trying everything. You know what I mean?
And aside that, you know, the more shorter you are, you know, you can actually, we do say you have a long lifespan.
Okay, so Robbie's more domestic.
No, you'd be more domestic.
So in terms of-
You'd be working in the kitchen.
So right now,
what
out
I mean?
of what we just did, probably he's having more marks. So probably he might
Yeah.
be the commercial,
Oh.
then probably you might be the domestic.
I'll be in the field and that. You'd be in the kitchen. Making tea and them things. Lucky, it's kind of still the same now to this day. You know what I mean? I'm the guy that I grafted and that, and these men.
You want any sugars?
These men,
How
yeah.
many sugars?
You're in the kitchen watching Love Island and those things. You know what I mean? Wow, this man's out in the field grafting. But it's all good, man. It's all good. Now you know where it comes from.
So let me show you where the governor was staying. This way. The place was converted into a prison for the Africans until the year 1992. That was when the prison also left this area, and as you can all see now, being a craft shop. So it was first a garrison, it became a prison, and today a craft shop over there. You know, the business here was very profitable. And talking about business, I mean 2 things. That is the gold business as well as the human trade. So when you get a place and you don't protect your end, other Europeans were willing to fight and take over the land. So this castle we are seeing here, I made mention it was built by the English, but then get to know 4 different Europeans had used this land before the English came in here. So the Portuguese came to our land first. So when they came in, they settled at Elmina. By the point the Portuguese saw the need to expand their post, so a section of their merchants came to this land. The English came in, took up the fort that was built by the Swedish, erected this castle, and stayed here for 296 years.
Wow.
When the English came in, they knew enemies would come fight them, just as others could defeat others on the same. So for that, they brought these cannons, or the weapons, here. Aside these cannons, they built 2 forts to serve as watchtower. So when you look up on the hill, you can see some white fortress over there.
Yep.
It is called Fort William. And there's another one also behind the church over there. It is called Fort Victoria. So Victoria and William served as watchtower. Soldiers up there, when they see intruders from the land or the sea, they signal those in here in the morning using flags. Afternoon, they use mirrors. And evenings, either Morse codes for signals or torches, telling them that enemies are coming. So the soldiers would move from where the stayed, surround themselves to the cannons, put in gunpowder, cannonball at the mouth, they light their match, then boom. The balls would enter the enemy ship, water gets in there, would sink into the sea. And for that, the English survived here for that long period. So the Portuguese, 100, Swedish, about 5, Danish, 3, Dutch, 3, English, 296.
And they can be infiltrated from inland.
England, yes.
But they can, but the watchtower would see them come in, so obviously would see the cannons, but then sometimes they'll be seen if they're coming from
the land. So we could see that some of the cannons are also facing this way.
Okay,
And it's believed that those days you fight, or they used to fight with bows and arrows with shields.
Right.
So probably the cannonballs can break the shield.
Okay.
And through those smaller holes, they can hide there with their guns to shoot enemies. So wherever that you'll be coming from, they had the whole place protected.
Wow. The contrast from the cell, the dungeons to up here, and the view and everything, they knew what they were doing. It's actually, it's disturbing a little bit, but honestly, mad.
We've been to the dungeons and we all saw the condition down there. So up here, inside the governor's chamber, we just compare what we saw down there to what we are seeing here. And we can all testify the type of vents that they had down there and what the governor is having up here. The view of the sea, the natural lighting, the space in here, all used by one person as the governor, whilst about 700 to 1,000 humans were staying down there. And aside having the space as the living room, that was his bedroom. So please, let's see the bedroom. That is the bedroom of the governor as well. So the living room was having 9 big windows, the bedroom having 5, and his corridor extra 2. So all over the place, the governor had about 16 windows for himself, whilst about 1,000 humans were sharing those smaller vents that we saw down there. And mostly we do say per the condition that he had here, he was probably staying in heaven, whilst the captives also stayed in hell. But the difference between the dungeons and where the governor stayed. And once you are appointed as the governor too, you'd have your reception and as well your office. So in here he would receive visitors, they would do their drinking and as well would entertain them in this room. And the smaller room over there happens to be his personal office. So once you are appointed as the governor, that will be your personal office. This will be your reception, your living room, your bedroom. And right underneath us happens to be the male slave dungeon. So whilst others were up here enjoying all this luxury, right here needs them this one. But it's just that when you are in the governor's chamber, you wouldn't hear anything down there.
Just imagine, like, when you do finally get out of this place, you then got to get into one of them slave ships, which are another horror show, and then sail across the ocean. You're heading either to the Caribbean or you're heading to America. Basically, every black person in this world that lives in America, that lives in the Caribbean, that lives in places like Brazil, the majority, 90+%, their forefathers would have originated from places like this. they were slaves. And they had to go through all them horrors and then be shipped across the ocean to end up in America and Jamaica and Barbados and Brazil and all these places. So this are very, for me, a very important place to come to. I'd urge everybody to come to some place like this to really know the history. You know the history of black people who live beyond Africa. It all started from places like this.
And if you do remember, I made mention walking in and out of the church, everything that was going on down there, you would smell, you would hear, and sometimes get to see the couches down there. So with church right up here, and right in front of them, they have a hole that could actually help them see what was going on in the dungeons.
What do you think they did?
Why would they do? Yeah, that's exactly that.
You know,
Why?
some historians do say it was actually made just to show their supremacy. Like I told you earlier, Africans already had their belief system. So if, let's say, your God can allow me to enslave you, walking in there, I'll probably get to see you.
Yeah, and then looking up as well. Yeah.
Those saved up here, and those that's what we have. And today the church, or the school for the mixed race, happens to be a library for kids. All right, so this section of the castle used to be a graveyard for the Europeans. And in the year 96, they had this place excavated, and they left just 4 of them, because they all were the only ones that had inscriptions as to the person buried underneath. And out of the graves, the one at this point happens to be the only African that was buried amongst the Europeans. And his name is Philip Kwaku. Originally, he's Kwiku, someone born on Wednesday from this town. His father happens to be one of the middlemen that were bringing captives into the castle. So the role of the father got his son a scholarship. So Kwiku actually left this place, England, when he was 11. Age 24, he became the first black man to be ordained as an Anglican priest after he completed Oxford University. And the following year, he was brought back to his own land. So right up there in the church, he was serving an all-whites congregation as a missionary, an interpreter, and a head teacher, whilst others were staying beneath him. And he served this castle for 50 years before he died. Wow. Personally, I know nothing that he did for against the trade, because one person up there can't dictate what should be done. And aside that, the same trade in here got him that scholarship. The first one there happens to be an English soldier. His name C.B. Whitehead. And Whitehead, we don't know what killed him. Some do say the Assantes, some do say the Dutch, and some do say malaria killed him. At the age of 38, he died. The middle is a lady, one of the few that visited this castle. Her name, Letitia Elizabeth London, the wife of George Macleay. She came in here, realized that the husband was having an African mistress. So they do say she poisoned herself. Others are saying that the African mistress rather wanted to take a position, so she poisoned her. And some are saying she died out of malaria. As it stands, we still don't know what actually killed the lady. Age 36, she also died.
Wow.
And the last one here is George Macleay. And Macleay is very popular in the Ghanaian history, because this man here introduced us to today's judicial system that we practice. So the first European court in our system is right up there. And through that, he designed a very popular treaty. In Ghana, we call the Bond of 1844. I made mention of it when we were in this room. Let's move to the country.
So the bit I'm confused about, you see when they're being auctioned off, where do they have like they cleaned and fed before they go? Does that happen?
So in the dungeons, there wouldn't be any cleanup.
No.
So the last cleanup that you would get would be at Asin Mansu, about 20 kilometers away from this place.
Okay.
From the feed chamber, through the tunnel, the captives would be walking. And you know, they were weak and tired, in chains, and they probably would walk slowly. So a soldier would stand here. His duty was to command or to shout at them to walk faster. And the other soldier over there would also get to count them, making sure the same numbers from the feed place happens to be the same group heading to the door, the gate of no return. So when they were to lose count, someone had to go down there, bring you out either dead or alive. So that was the use of the 2 spy holes here. So nobody would go in from this point. Rather, there is a spy hole. You stand to command, you stand to count. The rooms up here, the first floor, is where the merchants were sleeping. Down here, there are storage rooms, and right above them, the marketplace where we visited, their conference room. So this whole section of the castle was for the trade. The administrative quarters and the whole part here, aside the church, everything for the captives.
So out here, what was just? Is this just it was just empty space? But I know they've got
Parading, the graveyard, parading, and a small church here, the Methodist.
So this was always a graveyard, even.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So some of the officers were, so they had about 4 or 5 graveyards here. So one at this place, and the extra 4 in the town.
Okay.
All right. So from the feed place, they would walk through the tunnel and would exit from this point. So just as they blocked the entrance of the tunnel, the same days they had the exit also blocked. So the males would walk out, they joined the females, and all of them would use the door or the gate of no return. And per the design of the castle, this place was supposed to be the door of no return, of which this was the door. But because of miscalculation, the sea was coming in here. So they had to block this place and create a new door down there, so that when the males walk out, they join the females and use this door. Or the females in the dungeons were not left out. They also had their punishment cell. And a lot of the females were brought in here, those that would actually resist rape, and those that would also be fighting alongside the days. When you do that, they bring you here for you to get a change of mind. So you stay in for some days. A metal gate would block you from escaping. The smaller hole over there, you ease yourself in terms of food and others. And through this hole, just as they were feeding them twice in the dungeons, here they were fed once. Not all of them were willing to stay in such conditions, because the dungeon alone was not easy for them, not to isolate and bring them in here. So you avail yourself, they move you up there, they clean you before they rape you. You are brought back to the dungeons to await your ship. But then before the ships came in, some were seen pregnant. And when they see you pregnant, they take you from the dungeons, take care of you, so you give birth. After giving birth, the mother, you are allowed to breastfeed for some months. Then later, they take it from this place. And the babies were for them. So these babies, they had nannies and let's take care of them. And these nannies were the domestic captives they had in the dungeons. So that when the kids grow, they can bring them to the church. So remember I said they brought some mixtures up there. There was these kids. During and after the trade, some of them left this place, others also stayed behind. So in Ghana, if you are to check our coastlines from Volta through to Western, you have a lot of European names here. Names like Morgan, Vanderpoort, Van Dyke, Wales, William, Wilberforce, Jefferson, McCarthy, McLean, Swansea, De Graft. A lot of them happen to be descendants of the Bixby, yes. And others also adapt and corrupt African names into European names, so not okay. Descendants. All right, so we have 2 separate female dungeons. About 100 to 150 will stay here. The same number stayed over there. And the same condition in the male dungeons happened here as well. The only difference, as we all know, aside all the waste in the male dungeons, only females do menstruate. So just imagine as a female, if you were to stay in the dungeons for more than a month and no officer comes to pick you to rape you, you were going to stay in the dungeons. But I know once you're in the castle, aside they themselves giving you a wash to sleep with you or rape you, you could also get a bath when you were out here working and it rains. They could use the rainwater to wash the job. But imagine you've been brought in within dry seasons. That means there wouldn't be any rain for you to even wash yourself till the ship comes to get you from this place. So you could imagine the infections, the pain, the stench, the trauma they had to endure in there. The main reason why females were added to the trade was they knew having them, they would probably give birth. And giving birth means they're going to multiply the numbers of the enslaved Africans. And for that, the females were added. So we'll just walk in there, we just have a look at how the place is, and as well we'll come to front of the door or the gate of no return. So please, you have a step down. Look, as compared to that of the male dungeons, comparing a chamber to a chamber. And it was all because just in case they had kids that were below the ages that they were not expecting, they were brought into the female dungeons because the female dungeon had more space and as well more vents. So you could see the extra vent over there, which was blocked with bars, so you wouldn't get to escape. And how the females, their vents were made, it slopes this way, so air coming in probably make the place a little bit cooler than that of the male dungeons, as to how it was designed here.
Sad, man. They thought about everything, though. They thought about everything to just capture and enslave these people.
The door or the gate of no return. And I always say that this section happens to be the most emotional part of the whole journey of their stay in the castles. Because once we get to this point, it means there's no way you're coming back again. Walking out of the door, you lose your right as a human being, you lose your connection with your people, and you also get to lose your as an African. And I'm saying you're going to lose your identity, or because, please, are you Ghanaian? Yes, I need. Ba and Akan. So let me say, I'm not going to ask again. Let's say she's from, let's say, Accra, he's Nimate. He's from Volta, let's say he's Maule. He's from, let's say, the Baule tribe, let's say Bodi. He's from Yoruba land, Emeka, but they don't care where they picked us from. Once we get to the plantation, you're all going to be Christianized with names like Thomas, Esther, Mary, James, Philip, and others. I'm Master Happy to be Smith. So once I become Thomas Smith, we have James Smith, Philip Smith, William Smith, Stephen Smith, Peter Smith. Everybody here get the same name because you become his property. You speak Yoruba language, I speak Igbo, Frafra, Gar, Ewe, Fanti, Tree, and others. So due to language barrier, we can't communicate. So the best option is for us to learn from the master. You know, sadly, a lot of these Africans had never seen the sea before. So majority of them, when they walk out of the castle, seeing the sea, got them scared, thinking they're going to be killed. Others also knowing the system, they didn't want to journey with them, and they prefer to die here than to journey with them. Because in our system, we believe that it is better for you to kill yourself than for someone to put you to shame. So when they put them on canoes to pick them into the bigger ships, they were jumping into the sea to commit suicide. But then some were willing to die, others were not willing to do that. But I'm chilling with this man. If I jump, there's a possibility of falling in with me, we might over try together. You make it to the bigger ship, the weaker ones get unchained, the strong ones still remain in chain, they lay them on flaps, head, tail before they move them into the wheel. And historically, the largest number made it to the south, which have reached to Brazil. Some will take it to Argentina, Colombia, Colombia and other places. Take it to the Caribbean ones, areas like Haiti, Jamaica, Cuba, Trinidad and Tobago, Bahamas, Barbados, St. Lucia, Guyana, and others. And some will move to the north, areas like Florida, North, South, Carolina, Mississippi, Virginia, New York, and others. And some will move straight to Europe.
So they'd leave these conditions, and then if they make it to the big ship, they get put in, like you said, head to toe, isn't it? It's like they're caged. And how long is that journey, say to America?
A month from this place.
From here to America.
Historically now, it is said about 12.5 to 10 Africans survived the journey.
And then those who didn't even make it out of it.
Yeah, from there. So we had to estimate about, let's say, 48 or more, most of them also dying. So if they had like 60 million suffering out of the trade, only 12.5 survived the journey. We are not slaves. We are going to the same door or gate of no return. Out of the short and narrow door they had here, the captives would walk out. But they're moving out already. Soldiers, merchants will be here waiting for them because they had already used their own door, bigger one, down this way to wait for them. They move them in batches onto the canoes. Then the canoes will pick them into the bigger ships for them to be transported from this place. Due to the activities in the castle and around this area, it was forbidden to see a black person here. So they named this whole site Europeans Beach, a place meant for only European activities. Today, we see the place as a fishing village, but then they still bear the same name. Locally, this place is called Abrofo Umpuano. That is in English, Europeans Beach, as I made mention earlier. When we look right at the flip of the door of no return, happens to be a different narrative, the door of return, which is to say today, we are all going to journey back to where we came from. We had this door of return in the year 1998, when we celebrated our first Emancipation Day. We call it the Big or the Great Homecoming Day. You know, somewhere in 96, our then President Jerry John Rawlings traveled to the Caribbean, Jamaica, and other areas and got to know of the emancipation and thought it wise to institute it in here. So the next 2 years, when they were actually organizing it, they invited the diasporas to join us in here, our brothers and sisters out there. Coming here, the living never came alone, decided to come with their ancestors. So they brought 2 mortal remains, and one was a gene from the Caribbean lands, Jamaica, a lady by the name Madame Crystal. And the other also a gene from New York, a man by the name Samuel Carson. They brought their remains to Ghana, to a place they call Abanzi, where they have Fort Amsterdam, as you saw in the reckoning. From Amsterdam, they had to use the Atlantic Ocean through the same door or gate of no return, just to break the chains and the chain that said no, they would make it back. But then just as they came out of this castle onto the sea, the same sea also brought them home through this door, saying the chains had been broken.
No, that's hard, man.
Don't break it now, Rob, man.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Yeah.
That's not easy though. That's a skill.
That must take ages to do that, though. I mean, I wouldn't have the patience. I wouldn't have the patience to do that, man. How long did it take you to do this? How long?
One week.
1 week? No, too long for me. Too long. 1 week
1 week
from zero. Yeah, no, that's good, man. That's good.
from Accra, for material from Accra.
Yeah. Strong though.
Trade jobs, man. Let him come do some presenting.
I said something like this for you to do.
You stay and
This is what you need to be doing, something like this.
Yeah, which one's commercial? You cook.
No, I would have been in the field.
We are ending the tour now. I always say in here it is more of an experience than a tour, because we just get to walk through the things that happen in here. The best person I always say who should narrate the history should be the castle, because the castle we see here experience what I'm saying. None of us here were born those days to know exactly what happened in the castle. I always say that it could be that it never happened even as I'm narrating here, or probably it was worse to the extent that authors couldn't put them in write-ups for us to as well make reference from.
Yeah.
But then in this castle, we don't frame stories to create any psychological trauma in anyone's mind. Neither are we trying to incite anybody to go out there to go fight others. Neither is the history here to cause segregation among races. But we just want each and everyone that enters this castle to know the inhuman act, to know the crimes that happen in this castle. So we, the living today, will learn a lesson from the past. So we leave this place, do away this racial difference, tribal difference, economic difference, and most importantly also, religious difference. Living this place, we should never also forget about history. I always say history is there to guide us, because if we are bound to forget the past, then we are bound to also repeat this mistake over and over again.
So that's concluded the trip. It's been a very harrowing experience.
So much learning from
Yeah, and
Coast,
I'd urge everybody to come here.
100%.
Everybody to come here and see and witness this, because this is history. This is the history of
Black people.
black people. Every black person that you see, I think I said it earlier, every black person that you see who lives beyond Africa, 95% of them probably came from, their forefathers. This is where, they came through doors like this at various different places around Africa to get onto a ship, to go to Jamaica, to go to America, to go to all these places. So, it's a story sometimes that's not been told, right? So I urge everybody to come here. But it was a great experience. We had a great guide.
Big up Thomas.
He
took us through, and like I said,
and,
it's very educational.
I love the fact that over here in Ghana they preserved this, because these sort of things are really, really important. So they've preserved this for everybody to come and see. So I urge everybody to come here and see and witness and feel this.
Yeah, learn your history. Learn your history. That's it.
Yeah,
so it
very
doesn't repeat
important.
itself.
Very important.